Hey guys, welcome to the Notion Club. Today, Ethan and I are going to be talking with the device casting couch that consists of Aaron, John, and Ryan. And we're going to be going over should data rights be considered human rights and a little bit more about data in general. But first, Ethan and I just wanted to catch up. It's been a while since we've done Notion Club. So
How are you doing, Mariah?
I'm doing pretty good. Recently, I lost a friend, so that's been difficult processing. But, other than that, pretty well. Going through the motions.
Yeah. Have you been reading any good books?
Yes, I have actually. Because of my recent loss, I really realized that I do not know how to process grief all that well. I can process grief from years back and that kind of thing, but it's hard to do it in the moment. It's hard to process when it's happening around you. So recently, I picked up a book by C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors. He wrote it was originally journal entries, which later he published under a pseudonym. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, what pseudonym he used, but it's called A Grief Observed. And it was really interesting because even though he had lost his wife and he was processing the loss of a spouse, it was helpful to have. It felt like I was processing loss with a friend almost because I am so comfortable with C.S. Lewis, I guess, if you will. It was helpful to process alongside, the anger, the regrets, those kinds of things. It was nice to see someone who, in my mind, is a great thinker and writer, and for him to put his emotions out there and question things that a lot of people, for a lot of people it's taboo, like, questioning God or questioning
Tragedies. Like, if
yeah.
God is love, then why does tragedy happen? Why does death happen?
Exactly. So it was interesting to go through. I think it was like 75 pages, but it was really helpful. And I can't believe I've never read it before, honestly. But it was nice. It was nice to
Good.
be able to process along with someone, even if they weren't truly there in person.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful to have books and people as well that you can surround yourself with when you're processing different emotions and situations. And I think we forget to use those tools sometimes in the thick of it. Yeah. What about you? Have you read anything interesting lately?
Yes. Nothing I would say quite that deep, but really gotten into the beat poetry and beat literature from the 1940s and 50s in New York City, and so I picked up the infamous On the Road by Jack Kerouac, and I'm only, I would say, like less than 10 chapters in, but it's a really, really fun and just easy read. It's not really a story about much. So far, I mean, and from what I gather, the book is really just about a guy who hitchhikes across the country from New York City all the way out to, right now his destination's Denver. I think I actually just left off with him arriving in Denver. But the way it's written, though, is why you read it. It's just nobody can describe stopping in a diner and ordering an apple pie the way Jack Kerouac describes stopping into a diner and ordering an apple pie. It's just it flows so well. I think the other key to reading this book is reading it out loud. And so I only read this book when I'm like by myself and I can read it out loud because it sounds so well. His choice of words and the flow of the book, it's music to the ears, literally.
I really struggle with reading out loud.
Yeah, I'm not used to it either. I'm not.
It feels
But
impersonal sometimes, so it's really interesting that you're doing that.
yeah, it's more like I'm mumbling it to myself. There's just something different about hearing the words because it's supposed to almost be like a performance. I feel the way this book is written, and I am enjoying it a lot more than when I do like try to just read it silently because when it's silent, it's kind of boring. It's like I'm not really interested in the texture of the road that they're on right now. But getting yourself into a headspace where it's almost like you're sitting down to listen to classical music or something. It's just a pleasant sound by using a very carefully chosen set of words. And yeah,
Does
enjoying
it seem
It's
more
good.
personal because it is your voice? Like, what if you were to listen to it on audio or something? Do you think it
Well,
would carry the same way?
I actually there's a great podcast that I heard the other day on Sam Harris's Making Sense. I wish I could remember the author or the guest's name. I'll have to put it up later, but he had a poet on. And the poet was also trying to make this point that most poetry is supposed to be performed by the poet. So like going to open mics or for poetry or if somebody gives you a poem, have them read it too. It's a performance, and it's. I'm sorry. What was your question? I'm trying to make a point of something here.
My point was because you're reading it, it's a personal voice.
Oh, right.
Is it more interesting that way, or do you think?
I was trying to say there are actual recordings of Jack Kerouac reading excerpts of the book, and so I've gone and listened to those, and it's like okay, it makes sense.
Oh, on
It's
Spotify.
because
You
yes,
sent that
yes,
to me.
I sent you a couple snippets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess to answer your question, I wish that I could sound like Jack Kerouac because when he's reading it, it's like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. It's almost like, for me, I can't listen to anybody except the Beatles do Here Comes the Sun. Not saying I don't like any covers. There are a lot of covers that I really like, but for some reason, that song, like, it had to be George Harrison singing it. For this book, like, yeah, it's better when I read it to myself, but I think it's even better when I hear Jack Kerouac reading it.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that would make sense. There's a few things that I've written, and I don't read them out loud because we've discussed this. I feel very uncomfortable about reading my writings out loud, but that could just be my own block. But reading it in my head, like, I understand what I'm trying to say. Because I feel like there's a disconnect between writing something and then, like, reading it back.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not used to doing this with books either, but I've definitely had to get used to it with writing songs. You can make something look good on paper, but for some reason when I'm singing it, it just sounds wrong. There's not the words you want to be using when singing this melody.
Huh.
And so, yeah, different words can shape the melody differently and make it sound. It can make or break a song, in my opinion, using the right choice of words. Anyway, coming up, we have some friends in the podcasting world, experts on all things IT and tech. They are called the Device Casting Couch, and we were able to interview them this morning and ask them some questions about data privacy. And so I think without any further ado, we can bring in the conversation that we had with the boys. All right, so why don't you boys introduce yourselves to the audience?
So I am Ryan from the Device Casting Couch. With me is Aaron and John. We run our own podcast focused on tech and security for anyone to listen to if you're interested in shoring up your data protection, or just interested in tech in general.
Cool. All right. Well, we invited you guys on to the podcast because we recently watched this Netflix documentary called The Great Hack. And we don't really want to get into like the politics of what happened in that documentary. It seemed to me like that was more of a political documentary than anything. But one of the things they kept bringing up in that documentary was data rights. And I think that's kind of what we want to focus on here in this podcast. But before we do, boys, in your mind, what do you think of when the term data rights is thrown out? What does that mean?
When I hear data rights, I think more of like data privacy, and just in how it's being used and how much control we have on what we're giving to the companies. Like with Facebook, there's a terms and conditions that no one ever reads, but in there they pretty much own everything you post on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like really that's what I think is data privacy. People want to have more control on like how it's used, who they share it with, stuff like that.
I would agree with that. It's, for me, like data rights is an extension of your personal property. I mean, what you do in your normal day, like if someone followed you around to like the shops you visit on a day-to-day basis, like that would be considered stalking, right? Then the same thing happens online, but it's allowed because it's considered marketing or what have you. And I believe that should be an extension of what you do in your normal day-to-day. Like it should be considered stalking or what have you.
Sure. I would say data privacy and data rights do go hand in hand, but data rights applies to more private matters. For instance, there are some things in all of our lives that are public, and there are some things that are private, like HIPAA information or PCI information. So you just got to think of it like that.
Okay. Another thing that kept I guess one of the agendas of the documentary was to push this idea that data rights are fundamental rights. Mm-hmm. I know this is kind of more of an opinion than anything, but what do you guys think of that notion?
I think that's correct. I mean, like I said, if you translated what happens on the internet to everyday life, everyone would agree that it's wrong. And it's considered a fundamental right that you have a right to privacy, right? And on the internet, that seems to be ignored because it's new territory and there's not a whole lot of laws that cover it. But I would agree. I would agree it's a fundamental right.
Yeah, when we talk about data rights, and if we specifically mention privacy is declared a fundamental right, specifically in Article 12 of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So if we do carry that over to data, then I would say yes.
See, I tend to not agree, only because your data is very valuable to companies, and in this day and age, a lot of the things that you do publicly, like for instance, usually your job is public knowledge. Where you live generally is usually pretty much public knowledge. I mean, to the people around you. I think online we're going into more of an integrated society. And so more of that public information is going to be even wider publicly available. So we can't just go out and say, hey, you can't have anything on me unless I say you can have it, because you're using a company's free service. So saying that it's a right is not necessarily like feasible in this day and age.
You mean with like globalization in general?
Well, yeah. So like think about if Facebook started charging. Let's say Facebook costs $5 a month. How many people do you really think would pay for it? Like this company's offering a free service, and they're making their money off of the data that they sell for marketing preferences. Who you might vote for is a good thing. Who what things you might be interested in, and then they can like this type of polling. Like they used to do it by phone banks. Now they do it by collecting like what you like on Facebook, what you click on, what you go to, like what you buy on Amazon. So the world's changing. Like, how many calls do you get asking you to fill out a poll now? Just none. It's all done online now.
All right.
So with that, though, I kind of agree with you, Aaron, with you're using a free service. They should be able to take at least a certain amount of information from you to continue growing their business. But Do you think data-driven behavioral change happens then in that place, or is it just strictly, do you believe that most companies have just their business growth in mind?
I think companies themselves are not as cynical as everyone makes them out to be. I think companies are more about their bottom line profit margin than they are concerned about what you're doing in your house. Their idea is to target you for something that they think that you'll be able to do. So for instance, if that is buying something, then they're going to try to target you in order to buy things. There are whole companies that do only that. If it is getting you to, go a certain way politically or think a certain way, there are companies that do nothing but that. But even then, even before the online age, there was an entire industry devoted to that. Marketing has been around forever, and now the marketing has just changed to use data-driven approaches, and people are alarmed by it. But then again, before the internet was a thing, people were more concerned about whether or not their data was going to be exploited on, these phone-based polls and exit polls when people were at malls handing out flyers asking you to fill out forms and everything like that. There were people worried about that too, and this is just a further extension of that.
So if I can interject here, I guess I would agree to a certain extent. I just think that companies should be able to collect what they need to run their business, but I don't agree that businesses should be able to basically sell your data to profit without you complying with that.
But if you agree to the terms and conditions, then they can, correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you agree to the terms and conditions, then whatever. I mean, that's your own fault. But the way that the terms and conditions are usually written on these websites are intentionally confusing, and no one has time to actually read through the whole thing or the capacity to actually understand it.
Is data maybe, well, it is a resource, right? I mean, it's more valuable than oil.
Yes, correct. It's the most valuable thing on the internet right now.
Or on the world, yeah.
Maybe, like, mining this data, this resource, it's about the intent. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
So when people say, like, are you mining the data, like, it's not exactly mining. You're freely giving it away. No one's coming to your house and stealing things from you. Like, you are freely going on Facebook, posting your locations, posting things that you like, liking things, going on Amazon and buying things. Like, I'm a big proponent of self-hosting. So, like, as many things as I can that are open source and I can host myself where I control the outcomes of my data, I try to do as much as I can. So I think it's people's ignorance to the fact that of how these companies make money. Like, a lot of people were astonished, especially about Cambridge Analytica, like, how does Facebook make money? And a lot of people were shocked to find out that it's through marketing, ads, and selling data to other companies. That's their biggest moneymaker. And people were shocked to find that out, but it's like, how do you think Facebook makes money handing out a free service? Like I said, if some of these companies started offering you to pay a subscription, I guarantee you people would be selling their data left and right. It's either give us your data, everything that you currently give now, or you pay $5.99. I guarantee you there'd be very few people paying $5.99.
But Aaron, aren't there more, like, wouldn't you agree that there's more ethical ways to do this? I mean, look at DuckDuckGo. Like, they're a profitable business, but they don't use your information to sell to other companies. They just use it for targeting ads.
What makes Facebook so valuable is that the fact that they collect so many data points that they're able to hyper-target individuals, and it makes it more successful for people trying to sell something. They can see that, oh, you like this, or you search this, you're part of this Facebook group, etc. And they can tailor the ads for those people. And I guess really that's where a lot of the controversy comes in, is because how Cambridge Analytica used that. But that's what makes them more appealing when selling the information to these other ad sites and all that.
John, can I ask you, could you describe, like, data points a little bit more in depth? Like, just for, like, the average person listening? Because I don't understand what they are.
Is literally, it's pretty much everything. Every little thing they can get to know about you, your sex, your religious preference, your political views, your race, sexuality even plays a part in it. I know gay people get targeted for different things. Subaru actually had a huge marketing thing back in the 90s, and that was even before the internet, that focused strictly on lesbian females because they were buying more Subaru Foresters than other demographics.
Interesting. So they saw a market that they could target and thus provide.
So
okay.
data points is just every little thing they can get on you, and there's tons of them, and I listed just a handful of them, but it's literally almost everything.
Okay. Interesting.
So, yeah, like I guess I'm interested in finding the line. Where does collecting that data, those data points, it's like, is that good marketing or is that evil business?
I'd like to point out, they're not selling like your HIPAA information, which is your healthcare information, or your PII, which is mostly covered under HIPAA and PCI compliance.
Right.
So like none of your credit cards are being sold, legally, and none of your healthcare information, like nothing about it that would be like, I want this to be kept to myself. Like, I think people have this confusing aspect where they think that everything that they do online is being sold, and that's not necessarily true. Like, yeah, a lot of it that you're putting on Facebook is being sold, but if you're having a conversation with your doctor over one of these different healthcare apps, that's not being sold. Neither is the fact that you might have, some illness. Like some people were like I saw not too long ago an article saying that people were being targeted for different insulin prescriptions at different places. And they think that their healthcare provider did that. That's not true. When you go online and you search insulin prices on, like, let's say like a website like GoodRx or something, that's most likely where that's coming from. Not that I have that as a fact, but I'm just saying when you put data out there about yourself in the public sphere, you cannot be mad when people use that for better marketing. I don't think it's evil business. I think it's just a smarter incorporation of what we already had before.
So, Aaron, are you of like the mindset that you're not really bothered by any of the data collection that they do on the internet?
So I would just say I am bothered, but I take the stuff into my own hands and I say I'm going to keep a lot of my data off of the internet.
Okay.
That is what I do. I'm smarter about it. You cannot be mad when you don't care about it, you're ignorant to it, and then it comes back and it's like, hey, so I found out where you worked, and it's like, well, how did you know that? And it's like, you put it on Facebook and your profile's public.
Well, that really is how it is. Just everything out there is that you put out there, like every search, like say if you have erectile dysfunction and you look up Viagra, they're going to start targeting you for that. It's really what you put out there and, kind of teaching the public. We are in a technology age, and it's not going to slow down. If anything, it's going to speed up. We just got to inform ourselves and make sure we understand what is being sold and what's being collected and how it's being used and what you're comfortable with. Like a lot of people still have open Facebook profiles when they could lock it down so people don't get all the information on them and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I have a lot of friends where I've talked about this particular issue, and I came from the mindset, like, I grew up reading a lot of dystopian, like, novels and, like, thinking the future was, like, anything in the future was going to be bad, Big Brother, that kind of thing. And so, to me, when I started listening, or I started, like, The Great Hack, it kind of, like, unnerved me. And when I spoke to other friends, they were really not bothered. They were like, I have nothing to hide. Why would I be bothered? But to me, I feel like that's still too lax of a mindset to just freely give all of your information because you do have nothing to hide. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have anything to hide, but I still would prefer some safeguard. Not that I'm, like, of the mindset that, like, Big Brother's out to get me anymore, but it still concerns me because I don't know enough about what they do to feel comfortable with it.
So, like, my thing with that is it's like, no one's coming to your house, pointing a gun to your head and saying, sign up for Facebook or bang. Like, it's just not happening. Like, so the idea that it's a Big Brother type situation, it's not a government entity. Granted, the government can definitely use it, which I agree. There are serious privacy concerns with everyone using Facebook, and should we probably implement some common sense laws? Yes, and I have a good way of doing that the financial industry currently uses called the CARD Act, where terms and conditions can be laid out in an easy to read way. So prior to 2009, when the Card Act came out, credit card terms were just ridiculous. You couldn't figure out what interest rate you're paying. It was all this legal mumbo jumbo, and Congress came down and was like, nope, none of this anymore. And they made it all, if you've ever applied for a credit card, a loan, or anything, it has this black box, and you can see everything in it, all the terms and conditions laid out in plain English. That way anyone who can read can understand it.
Another thing I just kind of want to shout out, I'm not affiliated with them in any sort of way, but I do think they do a good job, and they're still working on it, but it's called TOSSDR.org, and they actually look at the terms and conditions of various websites like Google and stuff like that, and say like, hey, this is a good company, and they give them a classification from A to E. They say, oh, they sell your information for ads, or they collect this, or they use this, but only for very minimal, like uptime purposes, and just making the service better. So some people can check that out and see if their website's listed. Like I said, they don't have all of them; they're still working on it, but it kind of lays it out as an easy to read thing.
Another thing, if I can add to this,
And I mean,
California.
if you're really concerned about your data privacy, you should really start using something like a VPN. That way, the geolocation is not as accurate. The cookies aren't necessarily good at tracking anything through a VPN. Like, you have to start doing some common sense things to help yourself. And this is something that anyone can do. I would also highly recommend maybe not signing up for all these social medias. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a Twitter. I have a Facebook that I rarely log into. I don't really log into Instagram. I have geolocation off when I post photos. I don't check in places. So, like, am I still participating in the social networks? Yes. But am I providing everyone and anyone everything about me? No. Do I fill in my phone number on Facebook? No. Do I put my emails on there? No. I have the one to log in.
Yeah, sorry, Ryan. We didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no worries. I just wanted to add to the the readability of the terms and conditions. I spoke about it on our podcast, but California is actually, they came out with the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, and one of the instructions in that act says that companies will have to basically lay out their terms and conditions in layman's terms. So basically what that website is doing that John mentioned, that will become law, or it actually already has become law in California. Microsoft has already hopped on board and said that they will be fully compliant. Other companies are moving their headquarters out of that state and stuff like that to avoid this. But I just want to point that out, like Aaron said, with common sense laws, they are starting to kind of push laws like that, because I do think that that's just kind of a common sense thing. Like, you should be able to read the terms and conditions and understand what you're signing up for.
See, I like that because, I mean, personally, I don't have the brain capacity to go through and read every single thing. Honestly, like with Facebook, I just got off of it because I was just like, I don't understand enough and I don't have the time to look into it, so I'm just not going to be a part of it anymore. But, and not to say like anyone who does use it, I'm not trying to like knock anyone, but for me it was just simpler to do that. But I think if it did become more normal for these companies to lay out their terms and conditions, me as an average user, I think would feel more comfortable with using these websites. Just because, I mean, if it's simple, then okay, cool. It shows that they are honest and, with their business ethics, or whatever you want to call it.
For me, it's just kind of a common sense issue of transparency. Like, if you do want to sell my data, or you say you want to collect, my email or whatever, what I like, just put it out there and say that, and if people want to use your service, they'll use your service, rather than this cloak and dagger thing of burying it in terms and conditions. I mean, like you said, no one has the time or mental capacity to actually go through and read that. I mean, they haven't passed the bar exam. They're not going to read through the terms and conditions and actually extract the information. So I think it's just for me, it's just a transparency issue of, if people want to use your service and it's that good, they'll accept it regardless.
I would personally prefer that over like data rights becoming a human rights issue. Like, just as long as I can see where the data is going, I don't mind necessarily.
That's my thing, is when I hear things like this, is I don't like people equating data rights with what companies do. So, for instance, you can't punish a company for something that you agree to, is my big problem. So if we make the terms and conditions easier to read, and then you're mad because Facebook has your email, I'm like, well, I mean, what are you going to do about it? Like, that's kind of like going to the doctor and you have to fill out these forms, and then you're mad at the doctor because the doctor has your name. Like, you filled out the form and gave it to me. What do you mean? Like,
yeah. I think just with, with the Great Hack coming out, the way that they spun it was very political, but I think it woke people up to thinking like, oh, well, I don't want my behavior changed, and I don't want the way that I vote to be changed because these large corporations decided to, campaign certain ads and things. But I don't necessarily see that. They were swinging the argument that way, but I didn't understand it that way. It just seemed like it was something that was happening and we were allowing it to. Not that they were doing it on purpose.
My biggest issue with that documentary was it was very subtle, but they were definitely like just trying to inject this feeling into you that data rights are human rights, without really addressing that issue. Just kind of making that assumption and spinning it away to make you feel that way. And I thought it was a little bit disingenuous because I didn't honestly know how I felt about that issue. Yeah,
because up until that point, I didn't really know a whole lot about data rights in general, and I still don't. But it was just like, oh, whoa, what are they doing? Like, it kind of scares you a little bit. But then you think about it, and it's just like, wait, these are things that we have given to them. So they do have the right to use it.
Did you guys watch that documentary?
I did. Yes.
What did you guys think of it?
I saw the political side of it very quickly, because I'm very active in politics, and I was like, I see the way this is going, and I saw the way that they're looking at data rights as opposed to like how companies view it, and I think the way that companies view it is pretty common sense. They're operating in the environment they're given. So we blame them for doing what they're doing. Like, if we want to make some common sense laws that reform data privacy, I'm all for that. I'm all for data privacy, but what I don't like is when we try to punish a company for doing something that we knew that they were doing anyways in the back of our heads. Like, we knew that Facebook was collecting data. Everybody knew that in the back of their head. Now, did we know to the extent that they were doing it and selling it? Probably not. But then again, people don't understand some of the technology they're using, and I think awareness on how some of this technology works. Like, everyone knows the phrase, anything you put on the internet is always going to be there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's truth if I've ever heard it.
I do want to mention something real quick. I know we're talking about Facebook a lot, but pretty much every other website out there uses something very similar. Like, Google has a huge ad part of their company where they use your searches and all their services. Like, because if you have a Gmail account, they can see what you're getting, and it's in their terms and conditions, and they also hyper target ads, and just pretty much any free service you use or any website you go to has something similar to this.
Are there some that stand out most to you as far as like not doing the ethical thing, and then some that are standing out more than others that are doing the right thing?
So there are privacy-driven websites, like as Ryan mentioned, there's DuckDuckGo, which actually uses Google searches, but removes the tracking and everything that goes on with that. So they have general ads that people pay for and everyone sees them, but it doesn't hyper-target you if you like look up, Joe Biden or erectile dysfunction or whatever you're searching for. So it's not hyper-targeted, and they're still making money. But there's other websites out there that do. And I really just think if people are concerned about their privacy, they just need to go out there and look for stuff that does protect their privacy. There's a good website called privacytools.io, and it goes over everything of services, browsers, operating systems. If people are really concerned about their privacy, there's stuff you can do to limit your footprint and what gets shared.
Yeah, Mozilla also, who makes Firefox, obviously, they also have a website. I believe it's called Privacy Not Included. If you Google that, or don't Google it, but if you search it, it should come up. They also go over a list of popular tech devices like Alexa Home, or your Apple smartwatch, and they rate them based on how much data they actually collect, if they're listening constantly, if the microphone stays on. They run it through tests, and they have a whole list of stuff that's safer or unsafer to use. And then obviously you can make your own choice.
That's something I have a question with. There's always those memes about like Google listening to like everything, like, you know, or like you think of something and then the next ad that pops up is exactly that thing. Do our devices like necessarily, do they listen to us, or are they just so good at collecting data that they can show us those targeted ads? How does that like work?
Are the rumors true?
So, I can't remember the exact name, but there has been cases where stuff has been listening in, and a lot of times when that comes out, those things get a lot of flack. I can't recall any specific cases for like Amazon or Google Home, but I really do say that these algorithms almost know us better than we know ourselves, because they're showing you everything. They see what you're seeing online, and they can often, a lot of times, kind of predict what you're going to see and, you know, what else you're going to look up, just because of how many data points they already have on you.
So it's more about predictions rather than them listening to you at all times.
Like I said, there has been some cases. I remember a couple years ago there was something with an iPhone, some service they had running, but I can't recall the specifics right now, so I don't want to say anything factually incorrect.
Yeah.
There's been some, like John alluded to, there's been some cases where it definitely alludes to the fact that they are listening all the time. I mean, if you just think about it, your Amazon Echo or whatever, it has to listen. It has to keep its microphone on to listen for its name, right? And I don't think it's ever been like factually proven that it listens to everything. But I mean, it's just always on, so you can't really say it's not either. I don't think it's ever been. I don't think it's ever been brought out either way.
A story, I think. Don't quote me on this, but was it LG? Their TVs were caught watching people.
What?
It was LG or Samsung. I've heard that too.
Yeah.
There was also a huge hack on. I'm not sure if it was LG specifically, but there were some TVs that had the webcam on it for conference calls, stuff like that.
Yeah,
that were
yeah.
they
I
were
think
just
that's what
left
it was.
open. There was no security on them. So there was a bunch of people who were caught hacking into people's TVs and basically watching them in their home. I don't know if it was the company that was doing it specifically. I mean, it may have been. I'm not sure, but I know there was a bunch of TVs that were hacked.
See, for me, if it was the company, like, what is their point of watching in on people? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just seems so wrong.
So like I don't really think that there's like guys with headphones on at Amazon listening to your Amazon.
Yeah.
That's not how this is working. So
Okay.
like I'll put my plug in for open source software. I'm a big proponent for open source software. So if you download anything that is made by the open source community, which is massive, almost anything you use, there's probably an open source version of it somewhere.
Can you explain what
there's
open
a-
source means?
Oh yeah, so like it's source code that's developed by a community. So for instance, Linux is probably well known. Most Linux distributions, not all, are open source, meaning anyone can review the code, anyone can see what's in it, anyone can fact check anything that anyone else says about it. So like for security, that's amazing because not everyone knows how to review code, but the people that do can be like, yeah, I looked at this and yeah, they're not watching you in your house. Like, so the security's a lot higher.
And if they are, they can change this. They can change the code and release it themselves.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Okay.
I want to mention something. If you have a Google account, you can go to myactivity.google.com, and you can actually see your searches. It knows what websites you visited. If you use Google Maps, it shows searches you've used looking at the maps. If you ask Google, like, hey, Google, define this word or whatever, you can actually hear the sound clips back. So if you are curious about how much is being collected, just go to myactivity.google.com and you can see everything that Google's getting on you. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
John's deleting stuff right now.
really, I am.
Frantically.
delete. Hillary Clinton, where you at?
That's another question I have, though, is how much stuff that you delete is really deleted?
Oh, I would say almost nothing. Like,
Yeah, everything's replicated across servers. I mean, I don't know.
That's
It's a very hard question to answer because it's company by company and device by device. Yeah, you don't know really at the end of the day.
But even like I looked at something on Google Maps, like I didn't even like search it. I just kind of like zoomed in on the map and it said viewed area around and it named the city and I was like,
oh wow.
I'm like, this is it gets creepy. Like if people are really concerned, I think you should look at it to understand the depth of everything.
But for someone who is not tech savvy and like doesn't understand like what you guys understand, that would scare me a lot. Would just be like, oh my gosh, I only looked at a map. I didn't even like look at a specific place and it knows what I was looking at. To me, that would be like, whoa, they're watching and they're listening in. And again, I have nothing to hide, but like that would concern me.
Yeah, for the nothing to hide argument, I don't like when people use that because I can't remember who said it, but there's an individual who said that basically you can antiquate that to like freedom of speech. Like, oh, I never leave my house. I don't have anything to say, so I don't really care if freedom of speech is limited. It's kind of the same argument. And it's like, oh, I have nothing to hide, so I don't care if people are taking my data. That's not the issue. Whether you have something to hide or not it doesn't matter. People who have something to hide usually put things in place to hide them. The issue is just the principle of collecting that much data on you. And if the company doesn't have the option to clear that, I find that as an issue.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I am more concerned not that a company has it, because companies are going to do things that are in their own good self-interest.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say companies are cynical. I would say that they are selfish, though. That's their job. I would be more concerned when a government entity has access to this, like the NSA,
Correct.
CIA, FBI. That is when I would become concerned about more data privacy rights, because I knowingly gave my information to Google.
Yeah.
I understand the terms and conditions. I have a Gmail account. I get it. I'm good. However, I did not also sign it that way the FBI could have it. That was not my intention when I signed up. Nor the CIA, nor the NSA, nor their petabyte storage in Nevada or wherever they have it.
I
Like
thought it was Utah.
I mean, like they're collecting all this data on all of us, and like we're American citizens. I think that violates our Fourth Amendment right when it comes to a government standpoint, not from a corporate standpoint. So that is the more alarming factor in my mind.
Wasn't it put into place though with Bush that for after 9/11 that these government agencies had more resources to look in and watch its people?
The
Patriot
Patriot
Act.
Act.
Yeah.
And
Should-
you gotta understand now that law is one of the most dangerous breaches of personal privacy ever.
Yep.
So like, this is where like writing your congressman and expressing your disdain with that would be the best thing for this. And like, you don't understand like what they're collecting from the corporate entities that have our data already. They're basically in a back door without ever letting you know, forcing them to let them have that data. And like, this is why I really advocate for VPN. I really advocate the Tor network. I really advocate a service that has like a warrant canary. That way, if anything ever gets sent to them about your data, you will get notified through a third party.
Yep.
So, do you think, with this data rights issue, do you think it's kind of like a smokescreen for us to be more concerned with companies taking our data and us to forget that the government also has access to all of this information?
So,
Or do you think it's strictly just like people are starting to become more woke, if you will, and they're concerned about companies having it?
I think people are becoming more aware because for the longest time, like with the government, we didn't know until Snowden actually said something, and then it came to light what the massive amount, like the breadth of all the information. Like they were tapping into AT&T's like backbone and just collecting it straight from there. But also the companies, it just brings up questions on should this be okay? Will this be allowed? And it seems like when it's in the news, it gets like its time, but then it dies away and people really don't think about it.
Yep.
So I really think it's up to the person, to write their congressperson or use different privacy advocating software or services, and really take the control into their hands.
And like, this is where I'll put my plug in for like writing your congressman and voting. Like, you can look up, there are certain websites, and I'll have to get them and we can post them with the show, but like there are certain websites where you can find how good your congressman's voted for privacy rights.
Interesting.
And they give them a rating from A to F. So that is fantastic. They also do that for senators and also for all the justices on the Supreme Court as well. So it's very important that you get out there, you vote, you write your congressman, you be active, because these are your rights that are being stripped away. It's not anyone else's. And the government is not going to do anything to stop the tech companies from doing it. The reason is because it's also going to stop them in the process. Make laws preventing companies from doing it. How are they going to get the data they can now get from the companies?
Yeah.
I think the concerning thing is, especially when the government does this, is when they don't go through the proper ways, like getting a warrant and everything. Like, wiretapping is invaluable to law enforcement, especially when taking down like organized crime and stuff like that. It's when they do it without getting a warrant, getting subpoenas from companies, all that stuff. That's where it gets real fishy, and they're just doing mass surveillance on everyone. Like, when it's targeted and focused on a certain individual or group because of there's reason to believe that they're doing something malicious or illegal, then that obviously that's fine. But
And this is another issue that gets brought up, another argument, I guess, from law enforcement and certain like 3-letter agencies and stuff like that say, oh, if you pass these laws and stuff like that, it's going to make it harder for us to catch criminals. And I don't agree with that at all either, because they're still catching criminals, right? Like, they still can get a warrant, they still can go through the actual processes of catching people and bringing people to justice. So I don't think that that argument is, I guess, holds any water in the long run.
So to turn it away from a little bit of the political talk, what about when companies that we allow to use our data sell it to other people, like other countries? Should there almost be something is there anything in like the law to prevent that, to protect us, or is it just because we do sign over terms and conditions, they have that ultimate right to sell to whoever they want? It seems like there should be a filter at least.
I mean, none of us are lawyers, but I can't speak.
We can cut that too if you
No, I just can't speak to the legality, but I mean, if the terms and conditions say that they have full control over what you share, they have full control over what you share, and basically your hold on your data stops at that point.
So we can't be mad again if they sell it, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, basically. I mean, if you're agreeing to the terms and conditions and they're taking your data, yeah, it might be slimy what they do with it, or you may not agree with it, but I mean, that's how their terms and conditions are written. So I can't really say, company by company what they actually do with your data. But I mean, if you're signing it over, they can pretty much do whatever they want. So.
And like you also got to understand, like, money talks. And right now, the money is saying no one cares about privacy.
Yep.
Because everyone's still using Facebook, everyone is still using Google, everyone's still using Instagram and Twitter and all the rest. So, I mean, you're freely giving this stuff away. So the problem is that people, even if they do know, don't give a crap. Like, I mean, I know. Yeah. I still have a Snapchat, still have a Facebook, still use Facebook Messenger, because I honestly, like, I don't care about some things. But I'll be honest, me and John, when we got to do some stuff we maybe don't want nobody to see, that's truthful.
Lord.
Like, I have used Tor.
Oh, yeah.
I use a VPN. There are some things I don't want people to see about what I'm doing on the internet. That's my right.
Yeah.
Just like in my house, I don't want people to know what's necessarily going on in my household. That's also my right.
Yep.
But people don't necessarily care, and I don't like when people are, they put something on Facebook and they're mad that it's on Facebook. Like, well, like here's a big thing. When I was younger, the big thing is what happens when high schoolers are sending, naked pictures of each other around. What do we do about this? This was a big issue in my state. Like, do we charge them with child pornography? Like, what do we do? They're underage. And it's like, well, you're mad because you sent a naked picture over a social media site and it ends up being posted on that social media site. Like, I think this is all kind of your fault. Like, just don't do this in general.
At the end of the day, yeah.
There's
I
got to
think
be
it's a
some
very
individual
similar discussion.
responsibility at some point too.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, their companies have responsibility, but maybe individuals do too. That's a novel thought.
I mean, like, but you
I was-
can't blame the company necessarily. The thing is, if they stop us from putting some things online, then we're gonna say, hey, you're violating our First Amendment. Because right now, people posting on Facebook is kind of like an expression of their speech. They're saying this is protected, and there have been court cases over Facebook removing posts, even though Facebook has full right to remove posts. That's their right. It's their platform. They can do whatever they want. If you don't like it, go make your own platform. But people don't do that. So there have been court cases saying Facebook's violating my First Amendment rights. Like, since when is Facebook your speech platform?
No, I do agree with that. I mean, if someone comes into your house and you ask them to leave, they have to leave because it's your private property. They can't say, "Oh, you're limiting my free movement." That's not. No, you're on their property. So I do agree. Whatever you post and share, I mean, it's out there and it stays there forever. It's replicated on servers and people can copy and paste and take screenshots. Like, if you don't want it out there, then don't put it out there.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about those companies where you can sell your data for like money?
You talking about like the survey companies?
Yeah, like what do you think about that? Do you think it's a good idea that people can just actively like make money by selling their own data? If it's already being sold, they can take it into their own hands and like make money off of it. Or do you think it's like just kind of
It's capitalism.
Yeah, I think if someone wants to fill out a survey and put their opinion out there and get paid for it, that's good for you. When I was like a lot younger and I actually did it, I'd get like $5 in PayPal and I'd buy something on the internet, like.
No, I agree
That was
with
a
that. I
long
would
time
rather
ago.
see that than just taking data. If people want to sell their data, I mean, that's their right to do so. It's theirs, so whatever.
interesting? I just saw it come up recently because data is like the most valued thing on earth right now and priced far above gold. And then I saw something else saying that like you can sell your own data, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's a way for people to sit at home and like make a little extra cash.
I'd also like to point out, if this wasn't such a big industry, all of us making podcasts, all of us making YouTube videos, all of us on Facebook marketplaces would not make nearly nothing. You would make nothing. Sure. I guarantee you, if they passed laws that restricted data privacy, that prevented companies from selling it, YouTube AdSense, zero overnight. They're going to stop paying people entirely.
I
Wow.
wouldn't say completely go away. It's just they make a lot more money because they can hyper target ads. The ads are more effective because they can see where your interests are. So like before the internet got super crazy, there was general ads, and you're like, why am I seeing a Russian singles ad? I'm not interested in that.
Well, maybe you are interested in it.
But now they're like, you definitely are. You looked up this last night,
Well, even then, like, I own a business, like, and I've looked into Google AdSense about putting an ad on Google on YouTube. Holy crap, it's expensive. Like, it's almost like back in the 90s when they were buying primetime on CNN when everybody was watching TV. It's very similar. Like, how as a small company am I going to pay $1.1 million worth of ads? Like, there's a reason this stuff is so popular, and there are a lot more people benefiting from it than Google. Like, I guarantee you that entire industry of YouTube artists would just go out the window, or they would have to find another way to make money, like marketplaces and stuff like that. Because most of the money right now comes from AdSense. A lot of it. And we get the same thing from podcasts. We get the same thing from music. We get a lot of these different, like Spotify makes a lot of their money from ads for people who don't have the premium subscription. Same thing with Pandora. That whole business, like if they're not able to hyper target, they'd have to charge less for the ads, and then that would impact all of us. So like if you look at it from an economic standpoint, you can't really complain.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we run a YouTube channel. I'll be honest with you. We'd like to make some money too. Like if we had that, if any of us could replace PewDiePie right now, we would.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather get a sponsor rather than take money from Google. just personally, but I mean,
Sure.
it is still money at the end of the day.
I don't think I would replace PewDiePie. He seems sad.
No, I would. If anyone could take over PewDiePie's channel right now and get the AdSense money, I think everybody would be like, whose data is being sold? Not mine. I'm good with it. Let's go. Like, what is he still the highest grossing YouTuber?
Yeah, he makes well over like $1.5 million a year just through his platforms.
Wow.
Like, I don't know if any one of these big top 10 YouTubers is more concerned about other people's data. It's not their data being sold. They're probably like, yeah, let Ryan sell his data. I don't care.
So that's why influencers do so well. These companies are able to provide them with their, like, hey, we'll sponsor you if you promote us. And then that's where those funds are coming from.
Well, you can look at it on a smaller level. Like if you see like a fitness Instagrammer, people follow them are generally more interested in fitness. So that's when like say a protein powder company or some like a gym company or something, they'll be like, hey, mention our ad and we'll give you this money. It's because they know that it'll get better reception than if they went to like a cat Instagram or like buy this protein powder. Like,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, but just the company's doing it.
It's
on a
free
bigger
targeted
scale.
ads.
And that's where, people are getting all like their panties in a wad and complaining about.
Now, I think that all of this is just another form of marketing. We're talking about the data privacy rights and all this other stuff. Like, do companies have rights to your data? I personally believe that anything that's considered private data, like medical data, clearly private data, like your social, your address and stuff like that, I don't think that should be shared with people. I'm a privacy advocate in that sense. But if you go get on Facebook and post that you go to Starbucks every day and they start sending you Starbucks ads, I'm not mad at that. I mean, if you don't like it, get on Facebook then.
Or the competitor will pay him, like, go to Dunkin' Donuts or
exactly.
something, random.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Interesting.
I have a practical question. How much good does incognito mode really do you?
Nothing.
Gets rid of cookies at least, like.
I was like, I swear I have, like, within a matter of minutes after making a search in incognito mode, trying to get better about not putting as much data out there. Actually, you know what? I have another question. Is it data or is it data?
It's data.
Depends on where you're born.
There's no correct way. It's just wherever you were.
I've looked this up on several dictionary sites, and it has it both ways. It says it's pronounced both ways, just like route and root.
I mean, no.
Yes.
Those definitely router, not rooter.
No. I'm not saying that category. I'm saying like the route, like Route
British
66, like Route 66, Route 66. It can be pronounced both ways, according to like dictionary.com and Merriam-Webster.
Sure. Okay.
Merriam-Webster's wrong.
But yeah, to answer your original question,
yes.
It doesn't really do much. Incognito mode, it blocks some of the cookies and stuff like that, but you're still inputting information into a website. So they can still, incognito mode, it's not a VPN. It's not a substitute for any sort of actual privacy software or like data mitigation. It doesn't.
So basically treat it as a way of just making it not show up in your search history. And that's basically all that's really.
Kind of, yeah. It blocks stuff from your device, like it doesn't download some cookies and stuff like that, but it doesn't do anything on the business's end or the website's end.
Okay.
Well, part of it is while it like doesn't keep like your history or the cookies carry over, you still are being tracked. There's something known as browser fingerprinting, and they can see what browser you're using. They can see your screen resolution. They can see if you're running a Windows machine or you're on an iPhone, etc. And there's ways to mitigate it. There's certain settings you can do, or there's certain add-ons you can do that blocks trackers and removes cookies immediately after you close the tab, stuff like that. And it's really, this is a website I mentioned again, privacytools.io, has a whole section on how to make your browser fingerprint just kind of blend in with everyone else and not be so specific to you.
And there's also sites where you can go onto that will scan your browser to tell you what information they can gather just from you clicking a button. They'll tell you if they can gather, like John said, your screen resolution, what kind of computer you have, So they can target you for maybe an upgrade of parts, or they can target you for a new laptop, something like that.
I would say for most people, if you get a good VPN that is rated well with privacy activists, and you use Firefox, you'll be just fine.
Yeah.
So, can you guys explain the difference between trackers and cookies? Like, what, in layman's terms, what is the difference? Because they sound the same to me.
This is a John question.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I really don't know a lot.
I'm trying to think how to explain it.
These aren't the good cookies. These are the ones that taste bad.
These aren't grandma's cookies.
I know, I always think of like chocolate chip cookies. I'm like, why are they why are they named cookies?
Well, so a cookie is like this tiny little bit of information. It's essentially like a small text file that gets stored on your computer, and when you visit websites, they can see that, and like it'll report back like, hey, they went here, and it's useful because like when you log into a website with your password, it puts a cookie on there to say that you're still logged in, so you don't have to keep typing in your password a billion times and stuff like that. So there is actual some functional use. But with that, they can also track different stuff, like what other websites you go to, stuff like that.
What you add to your shopping cart, that type of stuff.
Okay, so if I like went on H&M, they would pull my cookies from my device and use it. Is that
on your device? So when you visit a website like that, they put a cookie on your device. That way, it just kind of knows, like, say your shopping cart, that way it doesn't just delete and like poof. Or, like,
okay.
Yes, some of them are useful. Some of them are websites just use them. I think they're called acceptable cookies. Is that what I think it's the term? But they're like cookies that help the website actually run, and just kind of quality of life and stuff like that. But there are some cookies, like tracking cookies and stuff like that will actually track you around the internet. And it's basically like, putting a tracking device on someone's car and then watching them on maps.
So
Google
like
is a good example of a tracker because Google AdSense code is on tons of websites, pretty much almost all the ads you see. And with that, they can track you across multiple websites. And it's like, oh, you visited this, and it starts tracking you and kind of builds a profile on you. I'd say that's really the big difference between trackers and cookies.
So you can't get like a virus from a cookie, because like if you go into incognito mode and they're not like putting cookies like on you.
Incognito mode does not block everything though.
Oh, okay, but like you can't get a virus from a cookie, can
No,
you?
cookies aren't malicious.
Okay.
They're really just little pieces that generally help the website functionality, but they can also like be used to track you and stuff like that.
Okay, and so then what is the difference between a cookie and a tracker? Because it sounds still the same to me.
Trackers, they pretty much kind of analyze you and they can view you almost across multiple websites. Like I said, Google AdSense, they can see what you do on different websites, a piece of code that's on the website. Where cookies, more like something that's on the website that helps out that website. It really doesn't carry over that much.
Okay.
But trackers do use cookies. I do want to say that.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So they're not the same, but they kind of go hand in hand then?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I still don't get it.
So
it's a little complicated. Like honestly, I kind of gotta look it up and then wrap my head around it.
Okay.
It's okay, Mariah. If I'm being honest, I don't even know why these things even exist.
That's why I was like, why are they called cookies?
because they give them to your browser.
Okay. But
Is that really why they call it that?
I mean, as far as I know, I don't know. I don't know the history of.
I mean,
If you told me that, that's the reason I believe it.
If I remember, was to say like it's a little bit of information, so people are like, "Oh, it's like a cookie of information," because like.
so like a breadcrumb, like Hansel
like
and Gretel,
a
like
small amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it was meant to be like, "Oh, it's a sweet for your browser."
No.
Hey, my
Keeps the
browser
sugar
has
up.
diabetes. Don't give me
But-
none of this.
It does make it sound like it's something friendly, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we got 30 cookies today.
It's a poisonous cookie.
Oh, goodness.
I think this is a little bit above our pay grade, Mariah. We're trying to understand, but we're not allowed.
On the next episode, networking.
Oh,
Router
please
or
no.
router?
We recently installed a video conferencing unit in this office where I work, and for whatever reason, placing the calls to make conferencing calls weren't working. We found out it's because our internet router had certain firewalls up, and we were given like extremely specific instructions on what words to say to our internet company to take those firewalls down. And I just failed miserably communicating those key phrases. I was just like, I do not know what any of this means. I'm writing down as much as I can. I just don't follow.
Man,
You need somebody from IT.
Don't feel bad. I do this for a living. And,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes I go into networks where they have 7 firewall layer, and it's like, this one program doesn't work, and it's like, all right, well, let's figure out which one of these 19 firewalls they have installed.
Yeah, there's sometimes when we have to sit back and be like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's kind of the one reasons I like working in IT, because it is like it's constantly figuring out how things work, and freaking like it's always something else that you don't understand that's come out, and you got to relearn everything.
Yeah, because just when you learn something, it's like version 3.7's out.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm really glad I don't work in IT. I
It's
would
fun.
fail
It's fun.
miserably. Goodness. Something that has changed my mind recently about marketing is I watched the show Mad Men recently, and before I was always like super against marketing, and now on a practical level, even just watching that show, I don't even know if it's entirely truthful or whatever, but it's just interesting to see how people like target specific ads, and it's really fascinating the way that they like use psychology and like almost use us against ourselves to sell products and businesses.
Oh, yeah, and this is an age-old process.
Yeah.
Like we're not doing anything different. They just found a more effective way of doing it to a larger group of people.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just marketing in a higher level area, because a lot of this data that's sold is sold to marketing companies.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of people are a little more scared or wary of like data being collected and marketing over the internet, just because it is so new, even though the internet's been around for a while. Like John said, more people are becoming aware of what's actually happening. So I think a lot of it is just kind of scary, even though it is at its source, it's just marketing. It's just the same thing we've always been doing, but it's just kind of scary because a lot of people either don't understand it, or they're just coming into contact with it and becoming aware of what's actually going on.
Ethan said he just lost his internet connection.
I'm back.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh.
Sweet.
Sorry about
What did I
that.
miss?
Comcast was listening to you.
Yeah, we changed
on the
Ethan's
Amazon
firewall settings. And
Yeah, we just hacked your
Comcast
computer.
heard it on his Amazon Echo.
Oh.
Decided to
They got offended.
Google, Mark Zuckerberg was like, they're getting too close, shut them off.
Well, I don't know about that.
65.
Oh, goodness. So, on a practical level, I mean, your suggestions just basically for people like Ethan and I would be read terms and conditions,
If you can.
you know, if we can. And if we don't understand them, we can turn to specific websites that would help us out with it, correct?
Yes. There's even
Okay.
some books. I want to say Michael Bazell. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. He has a great book about like erasing your online presence, and you can actually send different letters to these companies, and they have to legally remove your information. Just using different services, reading terms and conditions, kind of know what you're getting into, using different software. Like if you're really concerned, there's a lot of things you can do to minimize your presence online and make yourself almost invisible.
Okay. But again, I mean, if you do even send those like letters to the companies, will they just delete them, or will they just move that information like offshore to a different server that you just can't like?
You don't.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like a bank account, you know.
We're gonna move it to our server in the Cayman Islands.
Well, I mean, I've heard that people do that, so I don't know if it's true or not.
Well,
Yeah,
now
I
I
mean-
gotta delete my server in the Cayman Islands.
With good faith, most of these companies will follow through. Obviously, there's no way of really ever knowing unless you're inside.
Okay. But
I guess the best way
go
to
ahead.
know, become a 2035 presidential candidate and all of your online history will come out in the open.
But yeah, on a practical level, I think a lot of people get mad at the companies and turn to the companies. One of the reasons that I would see is they don't know how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So they turn to the company and they're like, why are you collecting this data and selling it? When
Yeah.
they don't know that they can do this on their end as well. Because, I mean, we all know the government moves slow. And to make these laws, like, I mean, the internet's been out for how long? And now this is just becoming, like, an issue that Congress is looking at. So, like,
Yeah.
if you want to do things yourself, like we said, privacytools.io, get a good VPN, a reputable VPN. Don't get freaking Tunnel Bear or some crap like that. Like, get an actual good VPN. Like, I use ExpressVPN. They're pretty good. We're not sponsored by them.
I was gonna say.
No, we have no affiliate. We're not sponsored by anyone. We're poor.
Not that we want to disparage Tunnel Bear.
Well,
No, they're trash.
yeah, they're
trash.
trash.
Yeah.
There you go.
Don't use like certain messaging apps, stuff like that. If you don't want your information out there,
WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is trash. Don't use WhatsApp.
Okay. Can I stop you right there? What
Yeah.
does a VPN do for an average user? Like, why is it important? Why do you keep mentioning VPNs?
So
VPNs are important in two aspects. One is the ISP. The ISP can see everything that goes over. They're the one providing the internet to you, and they can see all the traffic. But what a VPN does is it creates an encrypted tunnel and routes it to a server that the VPN controls, and then lets it go to the internet. So this is also good, not because you're ISP, but if you're at Starbucks and someone else is on the Wi-Fi, there are different ways you can go about and see everything that's going over the Wi-Fi connection.
Yep.
So it prevents like man-in-the-middle attacks. It ensures that you're actually getting what you're looking for and not going to a fake website pretending to be Facebook. VPNs are just an encrypted tunnel that makes sure no one else is snooping in on your information.
But you need
So
to-
it's not like the invisibility cloak from like Harry Potter or something.
I mean,
It's,
kind of.
is it? Okay.
I mean, they can
Oh.
see the data moving through the network.
Yeah.
Like if someone was using like a program like Wireshark or something like that to be able to see like information on a network, they'll be able to see information going through, but they won't be able to see what the information is.
Okay.
They just know it's something.
Yeah.
You need to make sure though you're picking a reputable VPN, because if you pick a bad one like VPN Hub or something like
Yes.
that, or Tunnel Bear, since we're going to talk crap about that,
Oh my word.
what you're doing is you're basically tunneling all your traffic that the ISP would see, who I would trust a lot more than Tunnel Bear, to Tunnel Bear. That way they can see all of your stuff instead of your ISP.
Yes.
So pick a reputable one. ExpressVPN has been audited like twice or 3 times now. I mean, someone can correct me on that. I'm not sure, but they've been third-party audited.
It's
They
been a
let
few.
someone in, and they basically looked at all their security measures and said, "Yeah, ExpressVPN is actually doing what they say they're doing." A lot of the other VPN companies are basing their setups off of ExpressVPN. So, not that we're sponsored by them, but I mean, we might as well get a check now. We keep bringing them up. So.
There's other good ones out there. If you don't want the one we keep plugging, I guess you can look up Molvad or Proton VPN. Those are also been independently audited. If you're really concerned about your privacy, you can pay them with Bitcoin. Like there's different. You can even use their Tor website to download it, so that even they don't know where you're at originally.
Yep.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
So what is a Tor browser then?
Well,
Let's see.
We don't. I can get rid of that if you want.
No.
Oh, we can talk about it if you want.
I mean, just that's a rabbit hole.
It's an
Oh,
extensive
okay.
subject.
Oh, okay. All right. I was
Do
just
a
trying to
whole
get
episode
basics.
on the onion builder.
No, so basically the Onion Router was developed by the Navy, and it basically intertwines everyone's information to where you're going, and it makes your information hop between like multiple servers. So it basically just mixes up your internet traffic with everyone else's, so it's very hard to track.
And it's encrypted.
And it's
So
encrypted,
everyone's like information is going into like a pot basically for like
yes.
soup, and
It's like
then
if you-
they just see the soup. They don't see where it came, like all the ingredients came from.
Yes,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
like
the
if you
reason they
had
call
a-
it the onion is because it goes through multiple layers. So it'll get sent to one server, and then it gets sent to another one, and then it gets to another one. So they don't know the original destination. Because normally when you go to Google, they're like, oh, you're in Salt Lake City, Utah, you know?
Yeah.
But where the Onion Router can pop you up, you know, across the globe, and it makes it
Yep.
just harder for you to track. There's other tweaks they've done to the Firefox browser to help limit cookies and different fingerprinting techniques that we were talking about, and it's overall a lot more secure than normal browsers are.
Just like going through Google or something and
Yes.
looking up. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just opening up Internet Explorer or something. Like, that's trash.
And that's exactly what I do.
Internet Explorer.
No, not Internet Explorer. That's too slow. But like, I'll just go on the internet by using
Oh,
Google.
I was about to
and-
like, come on, you know, we gotta fix you guys' whole podcast.
It's probably worth mentioning, though. I think we said this before we started recording. You guys were saying that Firefox is the best browser to use as far as like keeping your data private.
I would say yes, because it is open source, and Mozilla has recently done a lot of privacy stuff. Like they limit some trackers and different things like that by default, where Google Chrome is owned by Google, and they're already selling your data to everyone.
Right.
Yep.
So there's some questionability if how private you really are using Google.
Conflict of interest. Yeah.
Yes, and Firefox also allows a bunch of add-ons that you can install yourself that would kind of enhance your privacy online as well.
Okay.
And let's caveat, it's the best publicly available, most commonly used privacy browser. I'm
Correct.
sure you can find one that's better.
Yeah, we could
but-
mention stuff like Brave or Tor,
Yeah,
but
but we don't live in our mother's basement. We have better things to do.
Okay,
So-
so practical levels, you can use VPNs, Tor browsers, looking into terms and conditions. Incognito mode really doesn't do a whole lot for you in terms of internet security and data protection. And writing to your congressman about like your privacy or your data privacy being important to you as an individual. Anything else on a practical level? I mean, like, I know iPhones, they have a VPN option on there. I haven't explored it at all, but like, is that worth looking into as well? Like, if your devices offer that, should you use that, or should you just choose your own like VPN services?
I would say choose something that choose something that is independently audited. I'm not too familiar with the iPhone feature, but a lot of these VPNs offer mobile apps that will VPN your whole device when you have it turned on and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's just basically who you trust. You have to look
Okay.
into who actually owns it, and if they've been audited before, if they've released information when asked by like a subpoena or something like that, and what information they did.
Yeah.
Like some VPN companies, they'll just release everything that they have, and some
Yeah.
VPN companies that don't actually store your data will just give them the IP of their server and say, okay, what else do you want? This is all we have on this person. So like you just kind of have to look at like who you're going to trust.
Okay.
And there are a lot of VPN providers that if someone comes snooping and asking questions about your traffic, they will notify you even though they've been gagged.
Mm-hmm.
So they use a service called a warrant canary. You can look that up on your own.
Okay.
They'll let you know that someone's asking.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any websites that you guys know off of the top of your heads about just an average user being able to go and like find out more information about data privacy and such? Or
Like I said, privacytools.io, it really covers everything. There's different It even mentions different social networks that aren't widely known that protect your privacy. It mentions browsers, operating systems, different programs. Like that website, I would say, is really the stepping point. It talks about these trackers and different ways to mitigate them. It talks about browser fingerprinting. A lot of the stuff we covered is on privacytools.io.
Okay.
And it's really just a great way to get your feet wet and kind of start understanding and open your eyes to what is out there and what's available to you.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
they explain everything on the website as well of what DNS
They
is.
recommend different VPNs that have been audited and have no logging policies and stuff like that.
And again,
Okay.
we're not sponsored by anyone. This is just anything we mentioned in the episode is just stuff that we've used personally and we like.
Okay.
Stuff that we would trust personally.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, I think that's all of my questions.
Yeah, I think we've reached the end of our time. Can you guys, for the audience who might be interested, once again plug your guys' podcast?
Yeah, so we are the Device Casting Couch. A little bit of play on words there. We're on Spotify, Castbox, YouTube. If you look us up, we can obviously throw a link in the description or whatever for our sites. But yeah, we just go over just anything tech. Basically, we discuss anything from entertainment side or just comedy side of tech, all the way to current hacks that are happening, or just current privacy software and stuff like that. Any updates to them that are coming out. We just kind of discuss anything technology related or data security related.
And I really like that you guys are comedic through your podcast, like, because it could be really dry talking about all of this, but you guys are quite funny.
Also, I was saying to Ryan earlier, I appreciate that you guys do take the time to actually explain things to people who aren't in tech. I can actually follow most of what you guys are talking about, so I appreciate that too.
Yeah, that's kind of one of our main focuses, because there's a lot of podcasts out there who just focus on tech and they only use acronyms and stuff like that, and people who aren't in the IT field wouldn't understand what's going on. So we wanted to be able to make it to where anyone could listen to it and kind of glean some knowledge of how to actually protect their data or any hacks that are going on, so that they can proactively start protecting themselves.
Be aware.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to make it as general as possible, just to get as much useful information out to people as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, guys. We really appreciate you.
No worries. It was fun being here.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that was the Device Casting Couch. Hope you enjoyed that and learned a lot. And I think that's all we have to say from here. Peace out, bitches.
Bye.